Hello and welcome. Some 64 Air India aircraft are bringing back Indians who are stranded in different parts of the world. 2 aircraft have already arrived from Abu Dhabi and Dubai to Cochin and Kozhikode. Now the question is, one, how are these evacuations or airlifts being conducted? The right word I'm told now is repatriation. The second, of course, is who manages it? How does the airline, which is otherwise lying quiet or dormant, rustle up the staff and the infrastructure and the logistical capability to do it? And third, of course, is as many people would want to know, who is footing the bill? Is it the passengers? Is it the government? Is it a combination of both? So to discuss this, I'm joined now by Jitender Bhargava, former Executive Director of Air India. Mr. Bhargava, good morning and thank you very much for joining us.
Morning.
So I understand about 177 passengers and about per aircraft have arrived already in Kerala, and there are many more to come between today and the rest of the week. So how does something like this work, and how is it put together? Who manages the logistics, and how does an airline like Air India do this? And people are also drawing similarities between this and the airlift that happened in 1991.
See, Air India has by now become accustomed to evacuating people, operating flights in emergency situations. So this is no different, except that this time the government under the scheme mission has announced 64 flights to ferry about 15,000 people out of 6-7 countries. Now, they have called it at times evacuation flights, at times as repatriation flights. And the controversy that arose was largely because it was called as evacuation flights. A political party demanded that why is Air India charging them fares, when logically fares should be charged. And I would go along with the government in saying that, look, people can afford and they have gone and these are special flights and we must recover the cost of operating flights. So the evacuation meaning, if you really look from the dictionary's perspective, is that when you are getting people out of a dangerous place to a safe place is evacuation. By no stretch of imagination can you call Dubai, New York, Newark, Singapore as dangerous places. Indians have been staying there. They were stranded there because of the lockdown imposed in India, grounding of flights, etc. But everything is hunky-dory as far as the state is concerned. They're yearning to get back home. Yes, is a logical reason for them be wanting to come back, and therefore Government of India has asked Air India to operate these flights. That's one part. The second part is that people have been saying that, look, 1991 airlift and this could possibly be a bigger exercise. In my opinion, there are too many dissimilarities and one should not compare the 1991 evacuation mission to the present one. And the reasons are as follows. You see, when we operated the 1991 mission, it was to Jordan, which was an offline station for Air India. So Air India had to create total logistics for it, right from handling of a flight to issuing of tickets, etc. And these Indians had to be brought in from Kuwait to Amman on buses. Because as we all know, Kuwait was then under Iraqi occupation, forced occupation, and therefore they had to flee. Now, this operation lasted 59 days. So we kept operating flights while maintaining a normal flight schedule. Unlike now, when you have on virtually the aircraft capacity of Air India on ground, therefore you can mount any amount of capacity to get in people. So there's a huge difference between then and now. And then the other part is that at the moment, the tickets are being sold online. At that time, Air India staff was there to issue tickets. Ministry of External Affairs staff was there to issue passports or letter of identification, because when Indians fled Kuwait, they did not carry with them anything. So there was a totally different scenario created for Air India to manage and say. And the more important thing was, that time the government of India had given Air India free hand to manage the evacuation flights, unlike now when it seems to be monitored or being done under the guidance of the Ministry of Civil Aviation.
Right. So give us a sense on what the operating cost is. I know when it comes to fixed costs, Air India numbers go a little out of whack, but what is the operating cost of running a return flight like this? And what are the chances that the airline will recover some of those investments?
No, I'm sure they've done a calculation based on the cost and therefore the fares have been fixed. But you see, people have to appreciate that you can't compare it with the fare of a normal flight when you're competing and you have a very competitive environment, and therefore people at times sell seats at below the cost of producing a seat. This is where the full recovery is to take place, and people have to understand that when Air India operates a flight to New York for getting Indians, there they will virtually be flying empty to New York. So it's basically a two-way cost for a one-way fare recovery. So therefore, the fares are higher, and this happens with the
But
case.
is it necessary that they have to fly empty? Because there are a lot of Americans or people from America in India who want to go there.
You see, the original plan was to fly empty. Then came in demands from a lot of people, Americans who had been stranded in India and wanting to go back. Now, America and Singapore have allowed a certain kind of passport holders to travel, but others they've said no to it. So as a result of which, yes, it would help in Air India meeting the cost more liberally and easily, and perhaps they will decide, but they did not have an idea when they went on and put the tickets on sale that they will be taking people. One can always question, oh, you can be carrying cargo on these flights, which they should in the belly of the aircraft, because there is a need for it. When you have no transportation of flights between two countries world over have been, on a virtual stop, so you need capacity for transportation. But don't forget, there's a huge cost to running a flight on a standalone basis. You carry more number of crew on board because you're reaching the destination and you're getting back from there. You are not.
So is that so? Would it be fair then to say that Air India is making a loss on every flight that it's putting into operation?
You see, if you talk in terms of this mission of these 64 flights, well, they are not going to be making losses if they've done their calculations well. You see, people have to look at the in minute details. It's not just the cost of operating the flights. All crew members have to be given PPE. They have to be protected. All these are add-ons to the cost. So, people should not bother about the cost factor, in my opinion.
Right.
People should be bothered that after being stranded for 2 months, we are getting back. And Govind, you must look at the other aspect. Just look at the kind of fares that various countries charged when they evacuated or carried their people from India to their countries. And Air India operated many of the flights.
Right. So I have another question. So why could a private airline not do the same thing? If the fares are, ticketed online, for instance, which assumes that there's a certain degree of market forces playing. So why could not one of the Indian private airlines who are also flying abroad and overseas or have the licenses to fly abroad do the same thing?
Look, private carriers can operate flights, but to Singapore and Gulf. They do not have the aircraft to fly to London and to United States of America. So if I'm a decision maker in Delhi, I would like to deal with one party for the evacuation, but if I need additional flights, then I would say, okay, I will get the private sector airlines into it. But when you have only 64 flights, half of which are long distance flights, to look at it, with London, as I said earlier, you've got 2 flights to London and to United States. So you deal with one company, and the other part is that you don't have to get into the exercise of calculating cost and coming out with local tenders and say, okay, give me the rates. Rest media comes out and says, hey, you overpaid them because they were a private carrier, etc. There are a whole lot of things into it.
No, my question was a little different. So if a private airline, and this is the last question, took the initiative and said that I will fly commercially and use these flights to evacuate passengers from London, maybe not London because they don't have the wide bodies, but the Middle East and Southeast Asia, then why stop them?
No, they will not be stopped. The government is going to be enrolling their capacity or help for operating flights. But don't forget, in the first phase, the number 64 number of flights isn't a huge number. And Air India has its requisite staff in these various places, because that's one more distinction between 91 and now. Because at all the places that we are operating, the Air India is operating currently, Air India has its staff at the airport. It maintains its engineers and the ground handling staff, so they can easily manage it. So, it's a basically...
You're saying there is a logistical advantage to using Air India?
No, government, one point, what do we deal with? Normally a businessman does, let me deal with one window kind of a thing and one person to get the entire thing. When Air India or when the demand is far and more than what Air India can do, conveniently do, I'm sure government of India will seek the help of private carriers to operate flights, and they should.
Right. Mr. Bhargav, thank you very much for joining us and sharing your thoughts on the great evacuation, I mean, not the evacuation, but the repatriation, as you called it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.